Hi, um, I think I'm live again, and yes, I am. Look, I just wanted to share a post about insights that it, you and I may be getting about how we got to the present situation we're in. We are living in absolute chaos, but not if you don't value your liberty. If you're prepared to do any and everything you're told to do by the government without a thought for your liberty, your freedom, and your sovereignty, everything is fine. If, however, you have concerns about your freedom of choice, your liberty over your body, and your autonomy as an individual human being, then we're living in chaos. Because right now, we don't know whether or not we can travel, where to, we can't plan for our businesses, and there is this kind of cloud hanging over the entire world as to whether or not the experimental biological agent that's being called a vaccine is going to be mandated. Now, let me just run a parallel to see if we can get ourselves out of that groove and understand our situation using another example. Most of us are car drivers. Imagine a situation in which every single car accident that took place was splashed all over the media, social media, mainstream media, television, and all other channels with graphic images of what happened in those accidents. If those images were played every time an accident, however major or minor, happened, it wouldn't take long for people to associate cars and driving them with extreme danger. Imagine then that we also set up a narrative and say that cars are deadly, and we keep playing this narrative time after time after time across all media, singing from the same hymn sheet. Imagine then that if there were people who were advocating for driving cars safely, that because they disagreed with the narrative that cars were dangerous and accidents were absolutely everywhere, imagine if they were muted, if they were censored, and if they persisted in putting forward their point of view, however lucid, however rational, however evidence based, they were deplatformed. Then we would have only one narrative playing 24/7 about the danger of cars. Imagine then that we suggest that actually anybody who drives a car must be either soft in the head, psychopathic because they don't care about the safety of their fellows, and somehow antisocial. We could get the public who don't think that way to demonize car owners, first of all, and then particularly car drivers. Now, imagine also if the parties that were driving this narrative had two other things. One, a massive influence over the media that were telling these stories, a massive influence over the social platforms that were deplatforming and censoring those whose narrative they didn't like. Imagine if the person who had, or the parties who had that kind of influence with the media and the social platforms also had a major investment in public transportation, buses, tubes, coaches, that sort of thing. Then you would have a pretty good parallel for the situation we have now about how we're dealing with this illness that has been called a pandemic globally, how it's being managed. Look, under the other narrative, that the picture that I'm painting, it would not take 6 months for a lot of people to park their cars. It'd be difficult to sell your car on because who would want a killing machine? And imagine the chaos that would cause while we transferred our personal travel onto the public transportation system. Well, that is the sort of situation we have now. Because the parties that are influencing the policy that's being made also have a major investment and control over the media, the social platforms, and indeed the medication that is being possibly mandated to solve the problems that we have. Hence, before we get to the end situation where, if it was the car example we were using, people handed in their car keys, there'd be absolute chaos and paranoia across society. I mean, friend could turn on friend. That's the chaos we've got now, because nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. And every day the media is pumping out a steady diet of fear. There's nothing more upsetting than being told something which you feel or know to be untrue. The sense you get is that you're being gaslighted. And if you're being gaslighted, there's nothing you want to experience less than that. And so, personally, I'm finding that I have to limit my intake of the mainstream media every day, because while I need to know what's going on in the society around me, I can only take so much of this narrative, this one-track narrative that is being pumped out to the whole of society. But it has been the severity of this experience that has opened one's eyes to something that has actually been running for decades, possibly even centuries. Because what it's shown is that by the way communications are being handled, the narratives are being played out, that we are all being divided into silos. And there are those who believe one set of facts, there are those who believe another set of facts, and actually we are now being weaponized to go at each other. President Macron said that if you don't want to be vaccinated, well, then you're the guy who gets to stay at home without freedom to move about, while we who have been vaccinated have our freedom. What's he done? He has set up society in complete opposition with each other so that the people start to demonize and fight each other. This is very, very dangerous. Now, if that happens, cui bono? Who benefits? The only person that benefits from that situation is the person who is going to rule over everybody. In short, what we're talking about is the classical trope of divide and rule. Because if society is united, society is very difficult to manipulate and control. If, however, society is divided amongst itself, anybody can come in and do anything that they want with that society. Why am I saying that this is an eye-opener about things that have been going on, possibly even for centuries? Consider class. Class has been a wonderful way of keeping different people in their silos, on their own tracks, and within their boxes. And one group's been given more privileges than the other group, and the other group has come to accept that, well, this is our place and this is our lot in society. So we have to accept what our lot is. That's class. Think now about race. Particularly pertinent to me because I'm a what they call a minority ethnic. If people have been raised all their lives within the majority population to consider themselves somehow better, somehow more worthy, somehow superior to the minority ethnics that look, say, like me, and if this message, like the message about how dangerous cars are, has been pumped out relentlessly. In that case, cars have only been running since, what, the turn of last century? But that other message about racial supremacy has been running for hundreds of years. How on earth do you expect that person who has been exposed to those messages to change their mentality on a sixpence? Flip it the other way around. How do you expect a group of minority ethnics who've been told all their lives that somehow they are less than, how do you expect them to actually stand up for their rights and say that this is a falsehood? Remember, the message has been running for centuries. And yet, when people discover that there is something fundamentally flawed in the supremacist argument, they can't rise above what they've been taught for, well, for each person. It doesn't matter if it's been running for centuries. If it's been running all your life, it's all you know. Even if you don't live to be a century, it's all you know, and it's all that you will act upon. So, dividing people into these silos has been very, very useful. Now, imagine that you've been given these privileges all your life. You imagine that however bad things get, when we bounce back to the so-called quote unquote normal, you will still be on top. In fact, you will be motivated to support whoever is in charge because your support for that person connects with the maintenance of your privilege, even though everybody's circumstances are somewhat depleted. But you will still be better off than the next person, whether because of your class, because of your ethnicity, because of your color, because of whatever. So, this idea of being able to split society into tribes and silos is a very powerful one for anybody who seeks to control that society, because everything is ordered. It's the Freemasons who have this Latin phrase, ordo ab chaos, meaning order from chaos. So however chaotic things get, as long as you've got people organized in these ways, you will always be able to restore order. And it seems to me that this is the new understanding that I'm taking from the chaos under which we live. And having had one's eyes open to that, it's going to be very difficult to get back to the old normal. There will be a new normal, but hopefully a new normal that not only respects one's dignity, one's bodily autonomy, and one's freedoms, but one which does away with this divisive, piece of daggers drawn mentality that our society has been organized under. Last word I'll say. For this chaos to be maintained requires control of the media, because it is the media that pumps out the mood music that has the constant whispering into everybody's ears about which tribe you belong to, which silo you belong in, which class you belong in, which ethnicity you belong to, what privileges are associated with those ethnicities. The media is the main instrument for projecting that message. So there is going to have to be a change, not only in who owns the media, but also how the media works. How that's going to happen, I can't say for now, but it is absolutely clear that the media, as it runs at the present time, drives the chaos we are living under. And it is completely and utterly unsustainable. So maybe, however uncomfortable we are now, I hope people start to reevaluate the insecurity they've actually always lived under, but they've been bribed into silence over because of the little privileges they've been offered based on the membership of the silo that they belong to. Thanks very much. Let's think it through.